All right, so first a few things before we get into diseases. You're going to see these words pop up quite often, so I want to just lay them out, the definitions of these. Primary versus secondary versus tertiary. Primary dysfunction, and we refer to it as, you see it quite often as a 1 with a degree sign up there. But this is pertaining to, any kind of primary dysfunction is pertaining to the gland in question. The issue is, or the problem originates in a particular gland. So in other words, it could be hyperplasia, neoplasia, destruction of, let's say, the adrenal gland. So that's what's going to happen. Whatever's happening to the adrenal gland right there is going to be an immediate response because of what's happened right there at the gland. If it's destruction, then that's the primary source that why there's no cortisol coming out of the adrenal cortex. So primary. Then we have secondary. Secondary is where the problem is someplace outside the particular gland. So it's not that the hormone is not coming out properly. It is coming out properly. But there's something that's affecting where it needs to go. A good example of this is, let's say ADH comes out of the posterior pituitary. There's nothing, no issue with the primary source, but the receptors on the kidneys are no longer there. So now the ADH receptors are not working. It's not the primary source, it's the secondary source that's going to cause problems. Does that make sense? So not having ADH come out at the primary source, you're not going to retain water. Or if you don't have good receptors on the kidney, you're not going to retain water. Does that make sense? Okay? And the tertiary dysfunction is also a problem outside the gland, but it's more specific towards the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus, if there's something wrong with that, then all the target organs from there on out are going to be affected. So if the, let's say for instance, GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone that comes out of the hypothalamus is not coming out for whatever reason, okay? If it's not being secreted, then FSH and LH that comes out of anterior pituitary are not going to come out. And if these don't come out, then estrogen, which comes out of the ovary in response to FSH and LH, is not going to come out. You see what I'm saying? So that's what we call tertiary. Okay? Questions on those three terms? Because they are going to pop up. Okay. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Hyposecretion versus hypersecretion. Okay? In a nutshell, hypersecretion is when there's too much hormone coming out. Hyposecretion is when there's a deficiency or no hormone that's coming out. Okay? That's basically what that is. All right, so let's show you how I broke up this chapter. Okay? Now, I did it a little bit different. I know that a few people said, well, can I follow the book the way it is? This one, it's actually better to do it my way on this. I'm going to go from the head and work my way down. All right? That's the way A&P was done. This one, I think the book has it where you do this, and then it's going to adrenal gland, then it goes up here. I think we start from the head and work our way down. It's more systemic that way, with a little exception of how we're going to do pancreas. We'll still do it from the head down, but pancreas is not in this chapter, and I'll show you what that is. So we start off with, let's say, anterior pituitary disorders, then the posterior pituitary disorders up in the brain, and then we'll move down to the neck to the thyroid disorders. And in back of the thyroid, we have the parathyroid. So we're going to have disorders with those. Then we're going to move down to the pancreas. And again, the way the textbook has it is they chose to put the pancreas in a separate chapter all by itself, chapter 13. I disagree with that, but I want you to get that so that we have at least the pancreas dealing with diabetes and stuff, because it is really an endocrine issue. I'd rather you have it all on here, okay? We'll do the rest of that chapter when we get to the digestive system with the pancreas and dealing with all the different enzymes that come out and help with digesting food. Then we'll do the adrenal cortex, and then we'll also talk about the adrenal medulla, okay? And then lastly, we'll deal with these miscellaneous things, which is multiple endocrine neoplasias, kind of a surprising thing, but we'll talk about that afterwards. All the other stuff, when we deal with reproduction and stuff, we'll deal with that when we get into the reproduction. Like FSH and LH, I'll deal with a little bit here, but estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, we'll deal with that when we get over there. That's why I said these charts are not going to be totally filled right now, I understand, but you won't be, the only things that you'll be responsible for is the only thing that's in my PowerPoints, what I lecture, and what's in the textbook, and on those chapters. But there isn't much about estrogen and progesterone until we get into it. I promise you, you'll get it, you just won't get it right now. But for the exam, you will, final exam. All right, so let's talk about a few things before we get into these disorders. Again, this is all review, but I want you to understand this concept. There's 3 ways that hormones can be secreted. It's either some kind of neural reason, some outside thing that's making it come out, like stress, or it could be some non-hormonal thing, like calcium. We talked about, parathyroid glands, right? So calcium, that's not a hormone. Glucose, that's not a hormone, but that's going to tell a hormone to come out, whether it's high or low. Or we're going to have a hormonal stimulus. Literally, a hormone is going to target a gland to release a hormone. Okay? These are the only 3 ways hormones can be released. Some kind of neural stimulation, stress, some non-hormonal substance, glucose, calcium are good examples, or some other hormone, like thyroid-stimulating hormone, is going to tell the thyroid gland to release T3 and T4. Okay? Questions on that? So we have to deal with this negative and positive feedback. So what we have here is this. We have the hypothalamus. Then we're going to have the anterior pituitary, posterior pituitary, and then some target. We'll use the thyroid as our target over here. Okay? And what we got is that we have a hormone that is going to come out of the hypothalamus and target the anterior pituitary. This could be thyroid-releasing hormone. Now let me give you a little tip. Any hormone that has the word releasing or inhibiting comes out of the hypothalamus. End of story about that. Now there are hormones that don't come out of there, that do come out of there that don't have the words releasing and inhibiting, but if you do see releasing or inhibiting, it's coming out of the hypothalamus. And all the hormones that get secreted by the hypothalamus, all of them, will target the anterior pituitary, with 2 exceptions. The ones that are made here but stored in the posterior pituitary, which are oxytocin and ADH. Okay? Not too bad. All the hormones that get secreted by the hypothalamus, they will all target the anterior pituitary. All of them. With 2 exceptions that are actually made here, not secreted from here, made here, and that's the oxytocin and ADH that are made in the hypothalamus but get secreted and stored from the posterior pituitary. Okay? So the hypothalamus releases thyroid-releasing hormone, tells the anterior pituitary to release a hormone called TSH, thyroid-stimulating hormone, and here's the other clue. If you have the word stimulating in your hormone, it's coming from the anterior pituitary. End of story. There are other ones out there, prolactin, yes, that don't have the word stimulating, but if it does have the word stimulating, it's going to be coming out of the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary releases this thyroid-stimulating hormone to tell the thyroid to release T3 and T4. Okay? So what you got here is what we call the hypothalamic-pituitary-target axis. That's what that is. Big word, not hard though. We're going to get into this because once you understand what's going on here, you're going to actually appreciate what happens with thyroid function tests. When you have too much of this, what happens to the levels over here? Let me show you. If this goes on straightforward, okay, if this goes on, so TRH comes out of here, that's going to make more, so you're going to have increase of TRH, an increase of TSH, which is going to make T3 and T4 come out a lot or a little? A lot. So this is going to go up. Okay? Now, the problem is this will keep on going, and it's going to go higher and higher, and it's saying, whoa, 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 the thyroid's saying we got too much T3 and T4 coming out of here. We got to slow it down. So the T3 and T4 send a message to the anterior pituitary and the hypothalamus to say, whoa, we don't need that much anymore. Slow it down. So this is what we call negative feedback. This is going to tell the hypothalamus to decrease the amount of TRH, decrease the amount of FSH, which means what's going to happen to T3 and T4? Decrease. And it'll keep on decreasing. And this is going to send a message back up with negative feedback to here and say, whoa, we need more. We're depleting this. So it sends a message and says, okay, here we go again. We're now going to increase this, which means that this will increase. It's a teeter-totter. It's your thermostat, right? If your temperature is supposed to be, 70 degrees in your house and it goes up to 80, the air conditioner will go on and lower it. If it goes down to 50, it's going to go, it's a teeter-totter. If you understand this, it's going to make your life so much easier to understand diseases and about the levels of these hormones. Okay? Are we clear with that? Right? All right. So, negative feedback, and that's what is happening over here. Okay? But we could also have positive feedback. Most cases in your body goes on as negative feedback. That's a thermostat. There are a few cases of positive feedback that happens. It's mostly in reproductive. We'll deal with that when we deal with menstrual cycle and stuff. I won't go into it now. But in most cases, positive feedback is it's getting worse. It's saying that this is getting lower and lower and lower, and there's no negative feedback. It's actually not giving any feedback over here, and it's actually getting worse. So positive feedback usually is telling you there's a disease process going on. Okay? And we talked about that before. All right? So the hypothalamic-pituitary-target axis, you have the hypothalamus. It's going to have releasing and inhibiting hormones. All of them are going to go to the anterior pituitary. Then you're going to have the anterior pituitary that produces stimulating, and all of them will stimulate different target organs, whatever those are. Okay? And that's what's going to happen. Okay? And what I just did here is right up there. Same thing. Now, if you understand that, all right, it's really going to, that's just one story. I just did basically the thyroid for you. But if you understand this concept, don't make it turn into something that's magical and, not magical, but depressing, like this. Because it's the same thing. All right? You've got the hypothalamus going to the anterior pituitary, and that's going to tell TSH to come out of the anterior pituitary to tell the thyroid to release T3 and T4. But we have it with GH, we have it with prolactin, we have it ACTH, and so forth. They're going to do the same thing. Like this is going to, gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH, is going to tell the anterior pituitary gland to release FSH. FSH is going to target the ovary to release estrogen. It's the same thing. It's just busy. But if you understand that what I had before, just add the other hormones. It's the same principle. Okay? You clear with that?